Hey guys, in today's video, once again, talking about the very active tropics right now in the Atlantic. Of course, Invest 99L, definitely going to be the main story of discussion, main topic of discussion today in this video. And then Invest 97L, Invest 98L. Both systems, surprisingly, have, especially 98L, has gone up in chances of development. 98L now has a medium 40% chance of development within the next 2 days and a medium 50% chance of development within the next 5 days. It's a tropical wave located over the central tropical Atlantic, about 1,000 miles west-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, that is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear a little more conducive for development during the next few days, and a tropical depression could form by the weekend while the system moves toward the west-northwest or northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Upper-level winds could become less favorable for development by early next week. So, 98L only has likely around 3 or so days to form. Now, 97L has a medium 40% chance of development over the next 2 days and a high 70% chance of development within the next 5 days. Its percentage of development over the next 5 days has gone down by 10%, interestingly enough. It was 80% yesterday, so we shall see what happens with it now. It's a trough of low pressure that's located over the central tropical Atlantic about 600 miles east of Bermuda that continues to produce disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions are forecast to be generally conducive for development, and a tropical depression is likely to form late this week or this weekend while the system moves slowly eastward at 5 to 10 miles per hour. So here's the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook for both 98L and 97L. You can see 97L generally will be continuing to move generally towards the east and then drift off more towards the north and east in the coming days. 98L looks to start to drift more towards, again, the northwest, the northwest in general, west-northwest, northwest direction, and start to curve more out to sea. Now, of course, let's talk about 99L. This is going to be a lot to unpack here because the National Hurricane Center has upped the chances of development now of 99L to a high chance of 90% within the next 2 to 5 days. They are expecting it to form very shortly. Showers and thunderstorms continue to show signs of organization in association with a broad area of low pressure located over the west central Caribbean Sea, about 150 miles south-southwest of Jamaica. Environmental conditions remain conducive for additional development, and a tropical depression or tropical storm is expected to form later today or tonight while the system moves northwestward over the northwestern Caribbean Sea, reaching the Cayman Islands tonight and western Cuba and the Yucatan Channel Friday and Friday night. Given the recent developmental trends, tropical storm warnings for the Cayman Islands and western Cuba could be required later this morning, and an Air Force Reserve reconnaissance aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system this afternoon. All right, so again, that's going to be really key. The Air Force reconnaissance aircraft going into the system later this afternoon, that will provide a lot of great information to see if 99L has finally officially become a tropical depression. I'm thinking it will become officially a tropical depression by either really later this afternoon or if not towards later this evening and tonight. Definitely will become a tropical depression. I will show you its satellite presentation and whatnot in a minute. It's looking very impressive. Of course, the system is expected to enter the Gulf of Mexico Friday night and continue moving northwestward towards the central or northwestern U.S. Gulf Coast, potentially bringing dangerous impacts from storm surge, wind, and heavy rainfall to portions of the coasts of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle by Sunday and Monday. However, uncertainty in the system's exact track and intensity remains large since the low is just beginning to form. Interests in these areas should closely monitor the progress of the system and ensure they have their hurricane plans in place. Additional information on the system, including gale warnings, can be found in high seas forecasts issued by the National Weather Service. Again, people living honestly along the entire Gulf Coast, make sure you have your hurricane plans in place. By this point, or even just make sure you get them done as quickly as possible. That is going to be really, really key there. Again, we'll see what the aircraft recon finds later this afternoon, see if it officially becomes our next tropical depression. And if so, it'll likely become the next name on the list, which would be the I name, which is Ida. Now, that's pretty cliche because this system, again, is looking pretty dangerous for the Gulf Coast, and the I name has been retired the most out of any Atlantic names on the naming list for Atlantic tropical cyclones. So it's pretty cliche that this is happening potentially once again. So quite the interesting turnout. All right, let's go to tropical tidbits, and let's look at the current storms. Of course, we have a new tropical storm in the eastern Pacific, though I am not focusing really on any other basin than the Atlantic. But again, we have another tropical storm in the eastern Pacific. The eastern Pacific has been cranking out a lot of tropical systems lately. So here's the satellite loop presentation of 99L. Looked way better than it did yesterday when I showed you guys. And again, it's already formed a mid-level center, low-level center as well. So again, we're just waiting for those to align a bit more, at least a bit better, so that it ends up becoming a tropical depression at the least. And I do think that will occur by later this afternoon, and if not, going into this evening or early tonight. So again, the satellite presentation, loop presentation of the convection blowing up in and around the center. Lots of high cold cloud tops of negative 70, 80, even some getting up towards negative 90 degrees. So this system is definitely looking much healthier. The model and track guidance shifted much farther west, has shifted much farther east than yesterday. Looks like it will definitely shoot the gap, or maybe at the very least scrape very western Cuba, and then it will enter the Gulf of Mexico. Once it enters the Gulf of Mexico, it has free range to intensify as much as it wants, and nothing will stop it. Sea surface temperatures all throughout the Gulf, at least 29-30 degrees Celsius. In some spots, approaching 32-33 degrees Celsius. No shear looks like that it will encounter, so again, this system will definitely intensify, potentially even rapidly intensify once it's in the Gulf especially. And then pretty much all of the models are in very good agreement that it will make landfall along the central to potentially southeastern portions of the Louisiana coastline. But it looks like the central Louisiana coastline in particular, that is the general consensus that all of the model guidance is showing for where it will make landfall in the Gulf along the Gulf Coast. So again, if it does that and the direction it will be coming in, it will definitely spend a good amount of time over the Gulf and will be able to intensify a good bit, which means that it will end up being able to produce a lot of storm surge once it makes landfall. So storm surge is definitely a real threat. Of course, the wind and flooding rainfall impacts definitely also seem to be a real threat. Now, of course, definitely that also depends, especially the wind threat definitely depends on how much it intensifies. But again, storm surge, flooding, rainfall definitely seem to be a huge concern with this system. The GEFS ensemble model track guidance, pretty much in the same agreement with the general model track guidance. Going to potentially shoot the gap or at least barely clip western Cuba, go into the Gulf, and then, again, intensify as much as it wants. And then generally it looks like landfall will be along the central Louisiana coastline, maybe towards the southeastern Louisiana coastline. A majority of the models seem to be much more shifted towards, again, central to southeastern Louisiana's coastline for landfall. So New Orleans, definitely want to keep an eye on the system. People live in New Orleans, make sure you have those hurricane plans in place, and or at least getting them as prepared as possible and getting them fully ready as soon as possible. The GEPS, the Canadian Model Ensemble Track Guidance, much farther to the west in the beginning here, at least going through the Caribbean and then entering the Gulf, much farther west than what the general model track guidance and GEFS ensemble model track guidance is showing. But then once it enters the Gulf of Mexico, the Canadian ensemble model track guidance generally shows it, again, strengthening and then making landfall looks towards, again, the central Louisiana coastline. Now here is the current model intensity guidance, the 12Z run of it. Again, it is pretty much right on that line of becoming a tropical depression, tropical storm. Definitely will become a tropical depression, maybe even a tropical storm, honestly, especially by tonight. And then all the models have it really strengthening a large bit, especially getting to hurricane status. Majority of models show it Category 1, Category 2, even if you're getting up to Category 3 status already. Now, of course, once the recon gets in there, we'll have a much better, clearer picture of what the system will do and potentially how much it could intensify. Now, let's look at, let's see, aircraft, nothing. The aircraft, of course, that'll be out later this afternoon. Now, models. This will be very, very key. We'll look at, again, the GFS, European model, Canadian model, and then the HWRF and HMOD models afterwards, the actual hurricane models. First, we'll look at the GFS, show you the broader picture in the North Atlantic, show you the other two invests, and how much they could potentially intensify according to the GFS model. You can see 97L, not really forecast to do anything, but 98L, according to the GFS model, looks like it could intensify potentially a little bit, and then maybe intensify a good bit more once it's really out in the open Atlantic, and then eventually starts to dissipate and become history. But yeah, let's now zoom into 99L and show you what the GFS is thinking with 99L. Here's 99L. It's already formed again a low pressure system, a low pressure center, 1,005 millibars. I think that says, is that 1,005 or 1,008? Anyway, shows a pretty decent low pressure center that is formed within the center of 99L. As it progresses way north, the GFS model shows it way farther to the east and going way over, much of western Cuba, interestingly enough, and then shows it heading more towards the north and west and beelining and hitting directly over New Orleans. So that would be a really, really bad scenario to occur. But again, I don't think the system will go that far to the east, but at least, again, in the Caribbean and hitting Cuba before it hits the Gulf of Mexico, I think it will go a little bit farther to the west, more towards shooting the Gap maybe, or barely hitting the western tip of Cuba. So that's what the GFS model is showing. Very, very interesting there. It shows it, again, intensifying a good bit in the Gulf. Gets it down all the way to 957 millibars before landfall. That is a solid Category 3 hurricane, at least according to pressure. Now, the European model, let's zoom out so you can see what the European model is showing for the other two invests. The European model is a bit more bullish with 97L, but again, 98L looks like it brings it a good bit farther to the west, into the western part of the MDR before it curves out into the Central Atlantic and dissipates. And then, of course, it shows the European model is very bullish on another major tropical system potentially forming in the MDR in the coming days. So that is very interesting. Now let's zoom into 99L, as you might have already seen. 99L, the European model shows, again, like I said, barely potentially scraping Cuba or shooting the Gap, enters the Gulf of Mexico, explodes, and then hits central Louisiana's coastline. Definitely, if it hits the central Louisiana coastline, or generally if it hits just barely to the southeastern Louisiana coastline or central Louisiana coastline, that is extremely bad news for New Orleans. That would be the worst case scenario, especially for New Orleans, because again, storm surge, flooding rains, winds, especially the storm surge, since New Orleans is below sea level. That would be really, really bad to see occur. So again, that is not a good sign there. Now let's show you the CMC, the Canadian model. Let's zoom out so I can show you real quick the other two invests. Again, not that, the North Atlantic. Again, the other two invests, Canadian model not really showing much of anything except for maybe 98L forming. Looks like the Canadian model, like the European model. CMC model is the Canadian model. I mean, the CMC model, just like the European model, is a good bit bullish as well, with that potential next wave coming off of Africa. So that is definitely something to watch. Now let's zoom into 99L and show you what 99L is being forecasted from the CMC. Again, very similar to what the European shows. Barely scraping the western Cuba, barely scraping the tip of western Cuba or shooting the Gap. Entering the Gulf of Mexico, strengthening quite a decent bit. Definitely shows it the weakest out of all three of the main models here. But again, hitting Central-Southeastern Louisiana, that would be extremely bad news for New Orleans. Now let's show you the HWRF model for Invest 99L. Here we go. Brings it farther to the northwest, again, barely scraping western Cuba or shooting the Gap, enters the Gulf of Mexico, starts to really intensify. Really, really intensify. You can see it gets it down all the way to 941, 942 millibars, and makes landfall in western, maybe southwestern central Louisiana. Very interesting, very, very interesting. That would be really bad as well, because, again, southwestern Louisiana in particular, that That was where Laura made landfall last year. Devastating there. A very strong Category 4 hurricane. So definitely southwestern Louisiana doesn't need to be hit that hard again. So that hopefully does not happen, but we shall see. The HMON model brings it farther to the northwest again. Brings it farther over, brings it much more over a good bit of western Cuba, and then it really shows it intensifying as it hits southeastern Louisiana, just like what the GFS model was showing, and brings it right over the center, right over New Orleans, and shows it as a potentially at least decently strong Category 2 hurricane, it seems. Gets into the 970 millibars. And then, yeah, just brings very heavy rainfall, strong winds, storm surge. 99L definitely not looking like a weak system, something that's not going to do anything. Definitely looks like it will do something. Looks like it will be a major storm, and it will be something we will continue to track again as we continue throughout the rest of this week into the weekend and into early next week. Looks like landfall, by the way, for 99L as of all of the forecast models and whatnot, looks to be around Sunday afternoon now. So again, midday, maybe later in the afternoon, a little later in the afternoon on Sunday. So again, if that happens. People along the Gulf Coast, particularly in Louisiana, along the Louisiana coastline in particular, definitely make sure you have those hurricane plans in place. If you need to evacuate, make sure you know where you're going to evacuate to, because you only have now about 3 days or so, about 3 days, maybe 2 days really, before you really want to start getting on the road if you're evacuating. Definitely have only 2 days now to evacuate and get to where you're evacuating to. Because again, there's a lot of traffic that goes on when people evacuate for tropical systems. So again, make sure you at least evacuate at least 1 or 2 days in advance of the storm hitting. 2021 Atlantic hurricane season has been fairly active thus far. Has had already 8 named storms, 3 hurricanes, 1 major hurricane. Grace was our first major hurricane of the season. Total fatalities thus far this season is at 40. Total damage thus far is at $1.536 billion in damage, so already a fairly damaging season and a fairly deadly season up to this point. Now, the ACE value for the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season is at 31.7 units still. Again, but once 99L especially forms into at least a tropical depression and is named and whatnot, maybe 97L is also named, we'll see that ACE value go up a good bit, especially if 99L, again, does rapidly intensify, becomes a major hurricane. That ACE value will really start to go up. Again, we've had all the way through the H name, Henri. Henri hit the New England area, brought some devastating amounts of flooding, strong winds, so that was a pretty impactful system. Right now, damage total for Henri is currently sitting at $155 million in damage. So now it looks like the updated damage total is now at least $1.691 billion in damage, and Henri has currently killed indirectly 2 people. Currently, the damage total for Grace is still unknown, but Grace has killed 13 people directly, 1 person indirectly, so that death toll is continuing to go up. Next name on the list is Ida. Looks like 99L will claim that name, it seems. And if 97L does form, it looks like it will become Julian. Now, we'll see if 98L does form, becomes a named storm. Seems like models are starting to trend a bit more like it will form into potentially a named storm. So that would be Kate for the K name. So we shall see what happens with that. That'll be interesting. But again, Ida, the I name. That's the highest retired name out of all of the names on the naming list for the Atlantic tropical cyclones for the Atlantic hurricane season. So that'll be very interesting to see if 99L does get the I name, which does seem fairly likely that it will. So again, really hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative, helpful. If you did, please consider liking the video down below, commenting down below, especially what you guys think 99L will do, when you guys think maybe that it will become a tropical depression at the least, and potentially where you guys think it will make landfall, especially along the Gulf Coast. So let's have a nice lively discussion down there in the comment section, yet a respectful one on what you guys think 99L will do. As well, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, especially if you like this kind of content. Please do consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.